When I criticise Islam, I'm called a racist and a far right-wing radical extremist. When I criticise Christianity, I'm called a far left-wing radical extremist. There's no logical reason why criticising one religion should make me right-wing, or that criticising another religion should make me left-wing. Many of my criticisms of these religions are identical. First and foremost, I don't believe in magic or imaginary gods. I don't think either of these labels, far right-wing radical extremist or far left-wing radical extremist, is a remotely fair description of myself. It's just a sly trick to try and demonise people and convince others not to listen to what they're saying. I'm an individualist who believes in capitalism, and I'm a humanitarian who believes in supporting my fellow man. The anti-Islamic cause is going to attract racists, but it's going to attract liberals too, who are against religious intolerance. You point to one guy in 100 doing a Nazi salute and say, hey look, those 100 guys, they're Nazis. That's bullshit, that is. You've got more Nazis on your side than we have on ours. I've never seen any evidence of racism within the organisation that leads the EDL. I think the best way to combat this myth is for me to explain what my concerns are. If race doesn't come into it at any point, then let's stop pretending that I'm a racist. When it was finally accepted that being Muslim did not necessarily mean being of a different ethnic group, liberals in academia got the term racist accepted as referring to religious groups too. If criticism of a religious ideology is racist, then it's logical for criticism of a non-religious ideology to be racist too. So by that token, if I criticise Nazism or communism, that's racist according to your politically motivated abuse of the English language. To ascribe commonly shared beliefs to a group on the basis of what race they belong to is not logical and is not fair. To attribute commonly shared beliefs to a group on the basis of the ideology they believe in is totally logical and totally fair. The exact same people who accuse us of being racists are actually racists themselves. One particular fake EDL page I saw recently springs to mind as a perfect example of genuine racism. Its wall is plastered with slanderous, hate-mongering posts aimed at demonising the Jews. Reporting it has no effect, whereas our own genuine pages and groups are constantly coming down and having to be remade. The reason for this anomaly? Facebook have outsourced moderating of reporting to a company called Odesk, which is based in Morocco and thus has Muslim staff. Muslims within the media are lying to you about their religion. Their non-Muslim colleagues are naively believing them and propagating those lies. The most compelling lies are those told by people who don't realise their lies. Though distortion of the news is our biggest problem, I'm just going to focus here on one particular documentary series. I'm going to talk about a 3-part documentary series made about the life of Muhammad by Raghi Omar for the BBC. I can't cover every single lie because it's all lies, right from the start to the end. At the beginning of the first episode of this 3-part series, we're told, according to the BBC, that Muhammad's father dies just a few months before Muhammad was born. According to Ibn Hisham and at least 3 other of the biographies that the hadiths are drawn from, Muhammad's father dies 4 years before he was born. Muslims used to explain this away by saying that Arab women can carry a baby for up to 10 years in their womb, which is also a lie. Nowadays, you're going to find it extremely difficult to find this on the internet, because Muslims have started saying that Muhammad's father died in 570 AD in order to coincide with Muhammad's birth. The very last thing at the end of the last episode of the series is where the BBC leave you thinking that the precise cause of Muhammad's death is a mystery. They avoid making any reference whatsoever to the well-known real cause of Muhammad's death, diagnosed by Muhammad himself in the Hadiths. One of Muhammad's unfortunate victims, Zainab bint al-Harith, who'd been taken into slavery by Muhammad, poisoned him. All the men of her family had been murdered. Her husband, Kinana, had been horribly tortured prior to death, in order that Muhammad, peace-loving Muhammad, could find out where he'd hidden his money. It's the only instance I can think of where a documentary series devoted to someone's life doesn't actually tell you how they died, and actually devotes time to pretending it's some sort of a mystery. Towards the end of the last episode of the series, Omar gives us Muhammad's final sermon. He describes it as being the culmination of Muhammad's teachings, and wrongly tells us that it is a very influential speech in Islam. In point of fact, he's using a version of the speech which first originated in a book published in Pakistan in 1987 and is not what Muslims are taught, and does not summarise their beliefs in the way he indicates. It is Islam for infidels. Another topic dealt with by the series is, was Muhammad a merciful and just leader? An expert being interviewed pretends to be exasperated and frustrated at the idea that Muhammad was in any way cruel or unjust. Without offering any evidence for his false representation of Muhammad, he tells us that Muhammad was actually a very merciful and just leader. He tells us that there is no evidence to the contrary. I suggest you take a look at the truth on wikiislam.net and compare that against what the BBC is saying. Take a look at the list of poets murdered when Muhammad took control of Mecca. There's one incident, 2 little girls were murdered on the say-so of Muhammad because at least one of them had been heard singing songs disrespectful of Muhammad. He systematically sent out assassins to murder anyone who called him a liar. Islam is unique in that it condones paedophilia. The reason why it does this is because it is clear from multiple hadiths drawn from multiple seerah in clear, unambiguous language that Muhammad was a paedophile. Since according to the Quran, Muhammad was the perfect human being to be emulated by other Muslims, that means it's okay. To criticise paedophilia is to criticise their prophet. He married a 6-year-old called Aisha. The marriage wasn't consummated initially because it was thought she had some sort of illness. So initially he had her continue to live with her father Abu Bakr. Then, 3 years later, when she was 9 years old, when it was clear she didn't have any kind of illness, he sent for her and he consummated the marriage. The programme makers dealt with this issue by pretending there was new evidence to suggest she was 16 or 17 years old when he married her. There is no such new evidence. Their expert sneers at suggestion. This is a psychological trick designed to subliminally send you the message that this is a naive or ignorant idea, when in reality it's a perfectly reasonable belief. With this point, as with so many others, they intentionally leave the viewer the false impression that anti-Islamic propaganda is false, when in reality it's totally correct, and it is their program which is telling you the lies.
ولنا في رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قدوة حسنة حيث عقد على زوجته عائشة وكان سنها 6 سنوات وبنى عليها يعني دخل عليها صلى الله عليه وسلم 9 سنوات.
يقول 6 سنوات.
لا، عقد عليها وهي 6
وتزوجها
يعني العقد في 6 والبناء اللي هو الدخول في 9 سنوات. ولنا في رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم
نعم.
أسوة حسنة.
Omar deals with slavery in a similarly dishonest fashion. He tries to leave the viewer with the impression that Muhammad's position on slavery is somehow ambiguous. He even suggests that Muhammad freed slaves here and there. A suggestion which I assume is based on one lousy story where one Muslim slave had his freedom bought for 10 gold dinars by one of Muhammad's companions. Let's be clear about this. Muhammad was a slave trader. It was one of his principal sources of income. It's very clear from the hadiths. He would attack people with no justification whatsoever, kill all the men, steal all the property, and take all the women and children into slavery to sell. This is why, even today, imams resist Western pressure to ban slavery in Muslim countries. If you are a Muslim, you support slavery, and you resent Western imperialist attempts at imposing liberal ideas on you, such as all people being equal.
فقلت شنو قانون الجواري؟ فقالوا قانون الجواري يعني قال لي المفتي قانون الجواري إن لازم تكون دولة مسلمة غازية، دولة مسيحية أو دولة غير ليست على دين الإسلامي، وأسرى، يعني لازم يكون أسرى حرب. يعني قلت هل هو حرام؟ قال لا، بالدين مو حرام. الجواري ليس بالدين حرام، بالعكس الجارية قانونها غير عن قانون الحرة. الحرة عورتها كلها إلا وجهها ويدها، أما الجارية من السر وتحت، يعني تختلف جدا عن الحرة. والحرة لازم بعقد زواج، وهذا الجارية لا، فقط يشتريها وخلاص كأنها يعني تزوجها، فتختلف الجارية عن الحرة. فش اسمه طبعا هم كذلك هنا بالكويت سألت ناس مختصين متدينين وهذا، فقالوا لي صح مشكلة استغفر الله يا ربي الرجل أو الرجل على دين، يعني مو إلا ملتزم حيل، يعني يكون رجل سوي بدينه يعني ويكون عنده خير. الحل الوحيد إنه لازم يكون عنده يعني إذا لا يريد أن يأتي النساء بالحرام، يعني إذا كان يعني مبتلى بالفتنة، إنه يعني هذا هو الموضوع، إنه يعني يشتري جواري. أنا صراحة أتمنى أن يسنون قانون لهذه الفئة ويفتحون يعني الباب لهذا، مثل ما فتحوا باب الخدم المكاتب وهذا، يفتحون باب الجواري ويسنون قانون صحيح. يعني إحنا ما نبي عيالنا يعني يضيعون بالهاوية استغفر الله يا ربي اللهم استغفرك واتوب اليك بالزنا والقاذورات هذه. وان شاء الله يا ربي يا كريم خير. وانا الصراحة انا الدول اللي اشوف انها يعني مثل شيشان اللي هي بين حرب وبين دولة ثانية، اكيد في اسرى، فروحوا اشتروا هذول الاسرى، يعني مو افضل يذبحهم الجوع هناك، روحوا اشتروهم وش اسمه شغلوا هذا وبيعوهم على التجار بالكويت.
The program paints a picture of a wild, intolerant region made peaceful and tolerant by Muhammad, and the truth is the exact opposite. There are still good guys in the BBC and Channel 4, but they appear to be outnumbered by the Muslims and Islamophiles. If you watch television on the internet and never within half an hour of the original broadcast, you do not need to pay a licence fee to the BBC. It's just a suggestion.